Let me repeat that. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the City of Meridian Solid Waste Advisory Commission. This is the regular meeting for Wednesday, January 27th. It is now 1 minute after 4, and we'll start with roll call. Please indicate if you are connected or present. Mark Nelson.
Connected.
Steve Corey here. Scott Walters.
Connected.
John Keating.
Here.
Meg Larson. Karen Richmond.
Here.
Ren Spiewak. Isabel Cow.
Here.
And I see. Let me go back to Meg Larson. I'll give you the chance to chime in.
Hello.
We'll move on to the ex officio members, Rochelle Klein
Here.
and Councilwoman Strader.
Here.
Karen being present, we'll go ahead and proceed with business. The first item on the is consideration of the draft agenda. Are there comments on the agenda, the draft agenda?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve the agenda as presented or as written.
Mr. Chair, I would second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as written. Are there further comments? Further comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote. All those in favor of approving the draft agenda as written, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion passes. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the October 28th meeting. Are there any comments on the draft minutes?
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the draft minutes as written from October 28th minutes.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, I would second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the October 28th meeting as written. Is there further comments? Any comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the October 28th meeting as drafted signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. The motion passes. Thank you. With that, we move on to community acknowledgement, and most importantly, I want to welcome back Scott Walters. It's been a while since you've been able to be here, and we're glad to get all that all behind us and have you back on our commission.
Great to be back. Thank you.
And we have 2 new members as of this meeting. Rand Spiewak and Karen Richmond. Karen, would you like to go ahead and take a second and kind of introduce yourself and maybe give us a brief thumbnail of your background?
Hi, nice to meet everybody. I've moved to Meridian a couple years ago. Actually, it was 2 years ago this week. And originally from Pennsylvania, huge Sealer fan. So my background has been in the building industry, and prior to that, working for the British Embassy, and but most of my background has been in sales and marketing. So I thought I'd like to contribute to my new city and join this group.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for offering to serve, and we're happy to have you here. And I think I'll go ahead and wait and let Rand kind of introduce himself when he joins us probably at the next meeting. So with that, then we'll go on to the next section, which is program reports. And earlier today at noon, there was a meeting of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee for the county, for Ada County. And amongst the items, basically, they did their formal report on solid waste up at the landfill. The solid waste analysis was completed in November. So this was the first meeting where they had a chance to present the data. The data isn't really digested completely at this point, so it was very preliminary. And so I think we'll probably get more information going forward. I'm going to make sure I gave a copy of that report to Tom, and then we'll get a copy out to all of you so that you can see it. Some good information, but the scope of work was focused on what the county was receiving. There was some indication that maybe the data can be parsed to the individual municipalities. I hope so, but I don't know if we can. So anyway, that report maybe can get to you in a week or so. There was kind of a heads up of some indication that there may be some need to adjust how leaves are handled based on some interaction with state regulators on what needs to happen to the leaves. That's something that if it does come down, won't come down for a few months, but just to give you a warning that that may be on our, up for our consideration soon. And then some good news passed back from Western Recycling that revenues have been increasing, and so that hopefully there might be a little bit of relief from the cost of doing recycling. And then also I do want to just kind of take a second and say that last night I made the presentation on our fiscal year 2020 activities to City Council, and specifically want to mention that the mayor made it clear that the city very much appreciates the work of SWAC, and there was a few things that were recommended. I think those are probably things that can go directly to the Solid Waste Plan Committee for their further consideration. So with that, I will go ahead and move on to the next item, which is old business. And the first item under old business is update on the recommendation for the Hefty Energy Bag Program. And that will be presented by Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Initially, we were going to be talking about the life cycle analysis and material going to the cement kiln and also to Renewalogy. I unfortunately have to report to you that Renewalogy is no longer in business. They have shut down their operations in Salt Lake and have moved to Phoenix, thus negating the life cycle analysis entirely. Currently, the material that is still getting generated is continuing to go to the Devil's Slide cement processing kiln and will continue to do so until another opportunity presents itself. On Tuesday or Monday, I don't remember which day, I attended a meeting by the Bifusion Company, and they were letting us know about their intention to move into Boise to begin processing plastics in Boise into building bricks. It looks like this is happening regardless of additional funding garnered, and they would like to continue to use our energy bag material to go into that. So as of now, there would be no change to anyone participating in the program. They won't notice any change of service at the curb. Western Recycling will continue processing, and it appears at least that it will be a seamless transition from Devil's Slide to the Bifusion project. A couple of things to note. When material is collected in the orange bag and placed in a container for disposal, the city no longer owns that material. It becomes the property of Republic Services when it's in the cart, and then it becomes the property of Dow when it's sorted out at Western Recycling. So with that, I would say that the participation in the program will not change for curbside residents who are using it. However, I still think it would be important for the commission to continue with their vote of if they want to continue to devote city resources to the education of the program based on the new developments within said program. Mr. Chair.
Tom, I take it you say you need authorization to continue activities, or no? If we feel like we should change to go ahead and have the city expend effort and money towards it.
Mr. Chair, we're currently using resources to answer questions and educate the public on the program. Given the age of the program and the constant changes that are happening with the program, it didn't necessarily seem like it was a very good use of staff time to continue to devote resources to the program when it's hasn't been working as intended. So the goal was to have the commission vote on making a recommendation of whether or not to continue to devote city resources or to cease devoting city resources to the Orange Bag program.
Mr. Chair,
Okay,
can I ask a question?
Yes, the members of the commission, now would be an appropriate time to ask questions of Tom on the information he's provided.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Thanks, Tom. So I'm intrigued a little bit. I mean, there's been a lot of changes. So I think it's been hard from the perspective, I understand, of following a city program that's changing all the time. And if companies are going bankrupt that are startups that are trying to do something with all our plastic, but seems like a great idea to do something with all of our plastic. I guess my question would be, is it worth meeting with Bifusion to see if this program can be scalable in a different way? Is there a container that they could deploy or a way that we could increase our investment in the program so we get more out of it? Is it worth meeting with this company further to talk before, I guess, taking action one way or another?
Mr. Chair, Councilwoman Strader, regardless of the commitment of city resources, the curbside participants in the program, it won't change at all. It will just kind of switch because Dow will just change where they send the material. So our devotion of resources doesn't really have any bearing on the final destination of the material.
Maybe
And
quick-
as far as the scalability, that would be a question we'd have to have with Bifusion and Dow, since right now everything has to be in the orange bag in order for Dow to continue with its participation in the program. So I wouldn't be able to really answer the second part of that question.
Mr. Chair,
Councilman Strader?
so my honest opinion about the energy bag program, I think it's a good start. I think it was a good pilot. I'm worried it's not something that's being widely adopted enough yet to be scalable. And people have to go to the store, they have to get their orange bags or find a way to track down some orange bags. They have to be educated enough to know what things can go in it. And then they ultimately, hopefully, recycle it. I'd love for us to find a way to work with this new company to make it something more scalable or something bigger. That that comment goes nowhere except for to say that it feels like we're in this weird gray area with this program. Maybe that's just me.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question as well? Tom, you commented that it doesn't seem a good use of city resources when the program is not working as intended. Could you expand that a little bit? Is it because not enough citizens are participating because of contamination in the bag, or is it because of the end use of the material that's recovered going to the cement kiln versus rhenology, which is where we thought? Can you talk a little further about that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Larson, absolutely. The intention of the program at the time of its inception was to use pyrolysis to create diesel fuel. As of today, I can tell you that we have not been notified of any diesel fuel ever being produced with our material that was sent to Renewology. They may have some, but they have not told us that they've made any diesel fuel. Taking the material to a cement kiln is a purportedly better use of the plastic than landfilling. I won't argue that point, and the life cycle analysis more or less proved that out. But I think with the right now, the kind of not necessarily upheaval, but the in between of where the material is going to go, until everything is more concrete and more structured, I just don't think if we continue to bounce around, I don't feel that it's a good use of city resources.
So, Mr. Chair, just to summarize my understanding, and you can please correct me if I'm wrong. So what would happen is perhaps citizens that are currently using orange bags could continue to do so, and those materials would continue to go to the cement kiln, but the city would not advertise or encourage participation in there. It would just kind of sort of tick along a little bit. And then in the future, perhaps if there was an option that seemed viable, that was an alternative to the cement kiln, then we could rededicate ourselves to educating and encouraging participation at that time when we had maybe a higher use of the material. Is that fair to say? Or
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Larson, that is absolutely correct. It just doesn't seem like a good use of resources right now with the material just going to be used as a fuel alternative to coal. And once a better program is established, I think it would be much better to improve that education, perhaps partner with the new program when it comes on to really push it out a lot once we find a good, sustainable, viable option for long-term plastic diversion.
Mr. Chair. Tom, can you answer this? And maybe you can't. Is there any indication that the people that are contributing in the orange bag program realize that their contribution is going to a kiln, or do they still assume that it's going to create bio fuel or diesel, whatever it is?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Walters, I can't tell you that. I'm really not sure. I think most people think the program is continuing to create diesel fuel. That is what was pushed most when the program was created. I'm not sure as to what the knowledge level is of it now being used as an alternative to coal.
Thank you. I didn't assume that you would, but it kind of sounds like a bait and switch in a way. I mean, if these people are, in their heart of hearts trying to do something good and they think that it's going to create new fuel, but it's actually going to a kiln, I wonder if the participation level would drop even more.
Mr. Chair. Tom, you were saying that you mentioned briefly that there might be something in Boise with construction materials. I'm not sure I quite caught what you were saying there. Could you elaborate more on what you meant and what that is?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Cow. Bifusion is a company that is currently producing plastic bricks in Los Angeles. They are working to move to Boise. It looks like that's going to happen regardless of additional secured funding. So they're working to get a plant here to make plastic bricks. I'm not sure on exactly what the timetable for that is, but that is who is wanting to take our plastic once they get set up in Boise. They will be moving to Boise.
And this is separate from the orange bag program as it's functioning now?
No, it's the same for curbside customers. It's just a different destination endpoint for the material. So people who are currently participating will notice no change in service whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman? I have a question for Tom. So with bifusion, I just have one suggestion that when we first looked at Renewalogy, one of the, I guess, opportunities that I felt was lost was the opportunity to scale that up to the commercial level. And we had facilities like Boise State that on move-in day said we capture all of this styrofoam and flexible, all the low-quality plastics, the 4 through 7s. And we had shown interest in shipping that to Renewalogy to be converted to diesel. And at the time, there was no interest unless everything was broken down and put in these energy bags. And that was a concern just because I think if we're really looking at a durable program to capture all of the low quality plastics, it would be nice to have that scale beyond the residential program that we have. So maybe if the city chooses to meet with Bifusion, or if the Solid Waste Advisory Commission chooses to meet with Bifusion, maybe we can bring that up as a topic for discussion.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Klein, I think that is a phenomenal idea. I think a limiting factor is the fact that everything has to be in an orange bag. But with Dow doing most of the funding for moving the product to its final destination, we'd have to work that into discussions with Dow as well. Dow, I think, has a lot of control over scalability.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
maybe I could just ask maybe a silly question. But if we're reimagining recycling and the future of solid waste in Meridian, and City Council last night seemed really enthusiastic, is there a reason that we can't explore a more scalable way, not in little orange bags, to handle our additional plastics? And maybe just leave that as a placeholder for Rochelle, and maybe there's an opportunity Republic wants to take a look at. That's something a little more expansive, because it seems like putting things in little orange bags is a prohibiting factor for people. It feels like this is just a topic that's broad. I'd hate to tell the public, like, we're shutting this down if it's going somewhere else, personally. Maybe city just stops devoting resources for a while until it gets ironed out. That's just my 2 cents. I'm not a non-voting member, so I'll pipe down now.
Mr. Chair, I would echo Councilwoman Strader's comments. I think it would be confusing for the public to say we're going to stop orange bags and then later we're going to start orange bags again when we have a more viable option. But I think kind of middle of the road, not necessarily promoting or educating around it at this time, but then ramping that up later when there's a more desirable option for the materials to go to. But I think it would be very confusing to stop and start the program. And I think the middle road of just not dedicating additional educational resources to it right now is a good compromise.
Mr.
Is that a
Chair,
motion?
Tom? Yes.
in response to Commissioners Strader and Larson, the goal is not to stop the program at all. The goal is just to stop the promotion and education on the program until a more durable process is established. People can continue to participate. Currently, the city doesn't supply bags or anything of that nature anyway. All we do is provide education and outreach on the program. So the only city resource that we would cease to devote would be the education and outreach portion until a more durable system was completed.
That makes sense.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion then that we pause education and outreach efforts by the city until a more durable option for the materials is identified and developed.
Second that.
Tom,
Is that a
can we make that decision, or are we making a
recommendation?
recommendation to? Okay, so if I could, is it okay if it's a recommendation to council to, as you said, pause the education and outreach activities and such, but recommendation to council to pause?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would amend that to recommending to council that we pause the education and outreach activities at this time.
And the second is comfortable with that?
I concur.
Very good. Further comment on the motion?
Mr. Chair, one comment. I wouldn't amend the motion, but I would suggest if you're bringing that before council, that you bring it with a further discussion on this potential with bifusion, and that if Republic has suggestions, that they include those perhaps for our consideration as well.
I think that's a good recommendation. Further comments on the motion? Further comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote. All those in favor of recommending to council to suspend education and outreach activities in association with the Orange Bag Program signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Aye.
The motion passes. I'm going to go ahead and loop back for a second now that Rand Spywak has joined us. He is also one of the new members for the commission and joined us by my watch about 7 minutes ago. So we'll get you recorded on the attendance for the meeting and such. Rand, if you want to take a couple seconds to give us a thumbnail sketch of your experience, it would be great.
Let's see, I'm retired, but my undergraduate degree was in accounting. I went to work at a community college in Daytona Beach as their controller 50 some odd years ago. Spent my entire career, 41 and a half years in higher ed, and retired as the president of Daytona State College, small school in Daytona, about 37,000 students. Was a community college and then became a state college with baccalaureate degrees added because the universities couldn't keep up with the demand. Retired, my wife's retired as an elementary school principal, and we came here. Daughter was here as an engineer, and back in the 90s with Hewlett Packard, and we started visiting and loved it, and ended up building a place in McCall in 2001, and then bought a home here in Meridian in 2005, but didn't get to move here till 2011. So we did a lot of flying back and forth to visit Idaho. Worked on a number of committees with Mayor Tammy, and that's when I met Robert Simison. Worked on his campaign committee and told him I would be glad to help any way he needed any, because I've got the time to spend. The majority of what I do now is I formed a nonprofit corporation called IDHOA, IDHOA, and having served on a number of HOA boards, trying to make them a positive rather than a negative organization. I give volunteer time across the state. Right now, at about 140 HOAs I've worked with just in the valley, and as far north as Lewiston and as far southeast as Pocatello, just helping board members, especially new boards or older boards, try to improve ways they're doing things. So it's been kind of interesting, but that's what I do now. And I'm on the finance committee and a couple of the advisory committees with the YMCA.
Great.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Sorry, I got tied up and couldn't get my computer set up, but it's working now.
We'll return to agenda now, and the next item on the agenda is Recycle a Bicycle update. Rochelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't know if we can share the report I sent to the commission and to Tom yesterday, but I would say I don't see, it's Commissioner Nelson there, he's back. We have the best subcommittee, and so it's Commissioner Keating, Nelson, and Walters, and then myself. And so we spent some time, you can probably, if you saw this photo, we would meet at the Meridian Transfer Station, socially distanced and with masks on, and repair bicycles. And all the bicycles that we repaired were taken out to the Valley Regional Transit Storage Facility in Nampa Caldwell. And we just out of an abundance of caution did not deliver the bikes ourselves this Christmas to the Boys and Girls Club, but we delivered 38, I think it's 38 to the Meridian Boys and Girls Club and 28 to the Garden City Club, or vice versa. So the bicycles that were diverting from the landfill are being repaired, just really using materials that we're stripping from other bikes. And then we recycle the frames that we can no longer use for money to fund our program. So anyway, we're well over 1,000 bikes in the community now here in Meridian. And so it's pretty exciting. This was a really slow year for us just because of COVID. So we didn't partner with the schools or Farmway Village and some of the other groups like Meridian Parks like we have in the past. But we anticipate, hopefully, if COVID is behind us, by summer, maybe we'll do Meridian Unplugged again. And we've been working on bikes. And I think now that we've turned the page and we're in a new year, we'll probably get together again in the near future. I don't know, we haven't set up a date to get together again, but we were shooting for monthly before. And so we'll probably continue that throughout this year as things get warmer and as everyone's feeling a little bit safer. You guys want to add anything, commissioners?
Thank you, Rochelle, for being able to help deliver that many bicycles to, children that need them. That was awesome.
You bet.
Yeah, and it's a great program. And now we have sounds like a new mechanic sponsor to help us out. I haven't met them yet. But thanks for working through all those personalities and getting the program working through a pandemic of all things.
Sure, thank you. And the people who did deliver the bikes, it was the Safe Routes to School team, and Safe Routes to School paired each bike with a helmet. They fitted each child with a helmet and gave them a light as well. So, and I would say probably 90% of the bikes we gave away were picked up by parents and used as Christmas gifts for their kids. So we saw some kids, but a lot of them we didn't get to see. I just saw the pictures after the events, but so that was the feedback I got from Safe Routes.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to really commend the subcommittee. It's such a fantastic program that, helps on so many levels with helping families in need, helping kids, with physical exercise, and as well as recycling and keeping things out of landfill. It just, a multi-pronged successful program. It's really fantastic.
Thank you for that report. We'll go ahead and move on from old business to new business. The next item on the agenda is contamination issues at Republic Services Transfer Station. Rochelle, you want to kick this off?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have had a recycling center at our transfer station since 2012 when we bought sanitary services, and it has been increasingly popular in the last probably, I would say, year over year, it's just been increasing a lot. And one of the things that we've been realizing more and more recently as we've had more and more users, we've seen more and more contamination. So which doesn't sound like a big deal to most people, but it's a really big deal to us. We currently collect cardboard and just, I don't know if everyone's seen this, what I forwarded to Tom, but we collect the following materials: cardboard, mixed waste paper, tin and aluminum cans, glass, water bottles, bulky metals like appliances and things like that, and then clean wood for recycling. And out of those things, the cardboard, we haul that container. There are 2 containers there, and those are hauled between 6 and 7 times a week to the recycling center. And the revenue generated from the cardboard comes back to the Community Recycling Fund, which is managed by this commission. Or at least, yeah, it's managed by this commission. I want to say recommendations are made to council and then investments in the community are made. But it's a great program. When we've recently had to landfill more and more of these materials. So meaning I included some pictures. We get people who come to use the recycling center and they'll bring their cardboard, and inside they'll have packaging, whether that's filmy packaging or styrofoam or packing peanuts, they just, a lot of people just shove the entire box into the recycling container. And, we can clean up a bit of it, but we can't clean it all up. And as we are, getting busier and busier, we have less and less time to send people over to clean up those containers. And so what happens is sometimes the costs of operating these outweigh the benefits. So, none of these are ever revenue generating. I guess I want to be clear about that. The cardboard generates revenue and that comes back to the community recycling fund. But, as far as the aluminum and tin container, that's hauled maybe once or twice a year. So there's not much revenue. So we really have to rely on people keeping the materials clean. And we did have facilities similar to this in both Caldwell and Mountain Home, and we had to close those because they got too expensive. They became overflow trash sites for people who couldn't fit their trash in their cart, so they would drive to one of these facilities. And so we're concerned that we need to get ahead of it now to make sure that doesn't happen in Meridian, because there is always risk that if we can't manage the contamination in a site, that it goes away. So we have been working with, Tom came and gave us some feedback. The city has given us feedback, and we have one of our post collections manager that worked at another site, and he gave us a lot of feedback. So we've proposed additional signage, and we're going to include contamination information in the next city utility bill newsletter. And the city has access to, their social media pages and things like that. And we're really going to make a concerted effort to reduce contamination and educate people that when these materials are heavily contaminated, they are just thrown away. So efforts are somewhat lost if we don't all comply, I guess. Did you want to add anything to that, Tom? I included some pictures, but I think part of our issue is we have a lot of people moving here from other places that have had more materials included in like mixed paper or what cardboard means or things like that. So we have a lot of education to do in order to make sure we keep that site running optimally.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Rochelle. Staff just want to make sure to point out that the city is extremely appreciative of Republic having a place where people can recycle their material for free, right? Just, right in the middle of our city. We do not want them to not be able to financially manage the site. So it is very important to staff that we continue to really take the onus on education. We are helping design the signage that we want. We're doing really everything we can to partner with our franchisee to make sure that we get the education piece out so that everyone understands what you can do at the recycle center and how to reduce contamination. This is one of our biggest priority items for this year, and we do not want to lose this.
Members of the commission, do you have any questions of Rochelle or Tom on the information that's been presented?
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Strader.
I heard a buzzword for me lately, which is cardboard. So in my community I used to live in, we had cardboard recycling, and you had to, flatten your cardboard. So that took care of contamination issues, because if you didn't do that and wrap it with twine, nobody would pick it up. I guess I'm just wondering, based on the commodity prices right now and the amount of cardboard, is that something that Republic would look to suggest to the city at some point in expanding our recycling to help deal with that? Or even at this one site, I think signage would help, but maybe making some requirements about what form we take things in, if that makes sense.
Councilwoman Strader, yes, we have actually looked at modifying the curbside program, and the way it's definitely optimized right now, so everything's in the cart. And so to add materials outside the cart, we ran those numbers, and I think Tom has those. I think I sent them today again, if you have a chance to look at them. So I did send that information over to Tom about material outside the recycling cart, but it's definitely something we can revisit if you want to. And we do say flatten cardboard at the recycling facilities, just that it's not monitored. So we have people working on the tipping floor and at the booth and things, but we don't have an attendant at the recycling site. So we have to just rely on them flattening it and putting it in. We are hoping with the new signs, our post collections manager said that he worked at a site and they were like neon pink and neon blue, like signs that were very eye catching, which kind of surprised me. But I think everyone agreed that those probably would be the right types of signs to catch people's attention. And then also to a couple other signs we are looking at. One is that the site is under surveillance, or there's a camera. So we are looking at, we've done this in Boise where we have a camera. So if we find regular visitors that are putting trash in there, we can, recognize their cars and talk to them and let them know that, this site is just for recycling. It's worked in other areas where we've tracked them down, or if nothing else, let them know what the city code is for illegal dumping, and say that there's a code to protect against dumping your trash just randomly. So I think we have some opportunity here. Really, it'd be great, if people move in and have a lot of cardboard, we always encourage them to call our office, and then we can send a rear load truck, a different type of truck that doesn't load from the top, by to grab their cardboard. We always try first to get them to push the boxes out on Nextdoor or Craigslist or something for reuse. And so oftentimes if you just flatten them and put them out in front of your house, they're gone right away anyway. But we would rather just on a kind of a one-by-one basis run a specific truck for large cardboard loads at houses to grab that versus a citywide probably program with cardboard outside the cart on a regular basis. Or encourage people to bring the cardboard to the transfer station, which is always free. So does that help answer your question? And then we did run numbers last August, and Tom, I think I sent those to Tom again today. He's got them. Yes, he's confirming that. So if that's something we want to revisit, we absolutely can. Thank you.
Maybe just a sidebar or follow-up later on regarding that topic.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
Michelle,
Larson.
or maybe Tom, the opening to the container that they put the people can put their boxes in, is it just like wide open, or is like a slot that they have to slide things into?
Commissioner Larson, it's there are 3 windows cut into the side of a 30-yard, so it is big enough that they can just fold up a box and put it in. So it's not flat like our smaller commercial containers have a lid that has kind of a long, skinny like slot on the front, so people have to flatten their cardboard. And the bigger containers have bigger windows for TV boxes and fridge boxes and stuff, but you can definitely put smaller boxes that are not broken down in there. So it's kind of tricky because when they bring in really big boxes, we need to make sure they have the ability to thread those in, which just by nature makes it easier to get smaller boxes in that aren't broken down, I guess.
Sure. Well, and I mean, I would think that a lot of people do want to do the right thing if they know what it is. So hopefully the signage will help. They just don't realize that not all of the materials are recyclable. I think what's very confusing for people is they see the recycling symbol on it and just assume that it's recyclable in our community. And then my other question was on the communication pieces. So through the signage and through the utility bill mailer, is there any other components to that, like through social media channels or anything to let people, I mean, I think the pictures are really powerful to just show this is not okay.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Larson, there's a gigantic social media component to this. We're working on things such as shooting little short videos, doing a whole bunch of outreach on exactly what can be recycled and how to recycle it. Reducing our contamination is one of our top priorities for this year. That and reducing increasing our overall diversion rate.
Thanks, Tom. I'm optimistic that that'll help. I think people do want to do the right thing.
Mr. Chair and Tom and Klein, for the signs, is that something that Republic Services is going to be like producing? Do you need any help with the signs on that?
Mr. Keating, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Keating. We have a sketch of those signs, and we can certainly circulate them around SWAC for feedback. And if you think that's a good idea, I think this city is coming up with a few graphics, and once they add those graphics, we'll drop those in, and then we can send them around for your feedback. Definitely. And then we'll pay to have them made, and they'll be on our containers and at our recycling center.
Okay, thank
You
you.
have some graphic art skills?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments or questions in relationship to the presentation we just received?
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Tom and the Public Services for identifying this need and getting ahead of it sooner than later. And because we'd hate to lose that habit or that resource from our community. But yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if we need to approve anything or do anything, but we appreciate the information.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question for Rochelle. What is the status of recycling electronics, particularly laptops and desktop computers?
Thank you, Commissioner and Mr. Chairman. We have electronics recycling every Monday from noon to 7 available at the transfer station. So it's in the main parking lot right out in front of our facility. So that's just every Monday. And those are collected outside of the regular transfer station hours. That's through the county household hazardous waste program. So the L residents have the option for free to recycle electronics.
What do we do with those?
Those are, the county secures the contracts, and it was Stericycle, it's now Clean Earth. It secures the downstream contracts with where those are decommissioned and recycled. And I think that's in their annual report, I'm sure, in the county's annual report. So we can get that information for you if you'd like to see that, see where everything is shipped.
No, I was just interested whether they are repaired and redistributed or just gutted for the precious materials in them, or what. Back before school started with all the children online, and one of the car dealerships across the state and the YMCA's collected multiple thousand PCs, and volunteers from Hewlett Packard came over to pick them all up, refurbish them, put new operating systems on them for kids who could not afford a PC but had to take online classes. And I was there an entire day on Chinden collecting them, and must have been asked 100 times. I've got all kinds of older computers in the closet, don't know what to do with them. So I didn't know if we were recycling these where they were used by children, or they're just stripping them for parts or for precious metals.
Well, all of the computers that are brought to the hazardous waste drop site every Monday, those are all decommissioned. Those are all recycled for precious metals, and none of those are put back into use. And so I think there are a couple organizations in town or in the area that take computers for kids, but we have a commitment to that. None of these will be put back into circulation that are recycled at these drops, at the various drop sites. Which might be a shame, but I think people take comfort in knowing that they're securely transferred from the site to places where they'll be destroyed and recycled.
Yeah, we did not have any problem with donors of equipment when they were told that the volunteer engineers from HP were F-disking all of the computers, so there was no data on the computer. And so many of them said, there isn't any current information on there anyway. This thing's 7 years old or older. Someday we ought to look at what we can do with recycling the computers, especially if we stay with a lot of children taking online classes, to kids who can't afford them, rather than just stripping them for precious metals. Because it can be done. It was done easily.
Thank you. That might be something that SWAC wants to look at.
Commission, further questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is IRWS waste test.
Mr. Chair, the requester has rescinded their request, so we can strike this from the agenda.
Okay. That moves us on to the next item on the agenda, which is water bottle recycling container contamination reports. And I'm going to bet that's for, Tom. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the commission, I am just going to be updating you on our squishy water bottle recycling container. As you may remember, in August or October, I don't remember which, I'm embarrassed to say, the commission voted to have a 6-month pilot program for squishy water bottle recycling at the transfer station. Unfortunately, the 2 times this container has been run, it has fallen victim to the contamination bug as well. So much like the rest of the recycling center, staff and Republic are working together to create better signage and increase education about the particular opportunity to recycle these squishy water bottles that we can't normally recycle in our recycle containers. So thus far, we haven't had a successful load, but we are, instead of getting discouraged, using all of our resources to increase education on that container to make sure that people are using it correctly.
Members of the commission, do you have any questions of Tom on this report item?
I'd
So,
just be curious what the contamination is. That seems like a fairly simple category to limit.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Nelson, the contamination consists of everything from apparently Rubbermaid containers to plastic film to really anything else, cat litter bags, anything people think is plastic, not just water bottles. They're just using it to dispose of any plastic they don't feel like disposing of properly.
That's disappointing to hear.
Mr. Chair, Tom, so when we say unsuccessful, that means that you had to take it to, it had to be taken to the landfill. Is that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Larson, that's correct.
Mr. Chair. So there's been contamination within the cardboard and with the water bottles. Is this rise in contamination seen throughout the entirety of the transfer station and the recycling being dropped off there? Or is it just these 2 particularly?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Cow, it's been throughout the entire recycling facility just recently. And we do have some work to do. I know recently we were notified that the city of Cuna is directing residents to our recycling center because it's closest to the city of Cuna. So we'll have to reach out to them to see if they can help with some of the education when they're sending people our direction. So, but it has been more or less all of the different commodity types, except for glass. Glass has been really clean. So the people using glass actually, maybe because it's an open top container and inside the facility, and then people use the outside drop site appropriately, but we've had really very little, almost no contamination with glass. Good question.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm thinking the signage has got to really be bold. You know, it's got to like hit people over the head, like, stop. If you contaminate this, it will not go to recycling, or something really has to strongly hit people, because I think people they think they're doing the right thing, but they're not. Like they think they're doing the right thing. And I think that's the challenge, that there's no catch-all for plastic. Like there's no place that just takes it all and handles the sorting. And so if we're going to do it, we've got to have, I think neon signs make sense, like something really, it shouldn't be anything subtle. Tom, I hope you can come up with something that's very bold, because it would be a shame to lose our station here. I think that would be a real loss to the community. So I hope Republic knows that it'll be important. I think City Council will think that's important too, and making sure we get the word out.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I do second that. I've been thinking about the art thing and just trying to bounce off ideas of even having like a recycling figure, you know, have a bit, like I like the stop sign that people really do see, and then, you know, go down of very big bullet points and as they travel through. So it's something that they can't really miss. And it's a very, yeah, I second that. I've been thinking about that as well.
Commissioners, further comments or questions on the reported item?
Mr. Chair, and a question, I guess, to the commission at large, or to Tom and Rochelle, but is there anything that the commission or the city can do, and we as the commission can recommend to city council about having more of an educational outreach, sort of like the Orange Bag program? It's not specific to the transportation itself, but more of a community educational way to like ensure that people are more aware of what can be done in the transfer station and that they can use it in the first place. I know personally that a lot of people don't even know what the transfer, like that the transfer station will take their glass or take their cardboard. Is there anything that we could recommend that could be done apart from making neon signs at the transfer station itself?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Cow, that's an excellent question. Our goal is to increase outreach, so anything the commission can think of, I would be happy to entertain and vet. But our goal as Public Works, as Trash Talk Tom, heck, our goal is to get the maximum amount of outreach that we can, because we don't want to lose our recycling center, and we want to be able to have the cleanest stream and actually reduce our waste stream as much as possible through our diversion programs. So that is our main goal, and that is what I have been working on and have been tasked to do.
Mr. Chair, Tom, I mean, I would agree, like the multi-channel, right? So the kind of little videos and social media and stuff that you were talking about helps inform people about the types of things that they can bring to the transfer station, where it is, that kind of thing. But I think when you get there, you know, real simple signs on the water bottle container. If it's not a water bottle, don't put it in here. It's a simple message, whereas the different types of plastic and where you should put them is a little more complicated, and that's, you know, a fit for a different type of material. But I think the signage at the transfer station itself, which container to put which thing in, can just really be bold and simple, straightforward, but working together with the other efforts at education. And hopefully that will help, you know.
Yeah, and to echo that also, Tom, it seems like our goal is to get them to already have the right stuff filtered before they leave their house. So it's been a while since I used that area. I mean, if they come with their box full of plastics and they find a place for 50% of it, and the other 50% they want to drive home, do we have that last bin that's the trash, the stuff that does not fit the rest of the pictures on our new signs? I'm just concerned that, you know, we get down there and you get lazy, and it's like, I'll just toss the rest in. I can do the work because there's not a trash can available. And there might be, I don't know.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Nelson, trash is, you have to pay to dump trash at the transfer station. The recycling area is free, but one of my concerns is that residents may be trying to find a less expensive alternative to dumping their trash the right way and are using the recycle containers to do so. So I think for some people it is a lack of understanding of what is recyclable, but for some people it may be, I brought all this stuff, I'm going to put half of it here. Oh, I'm already here, I'll just put the rest here. So our goal is that pre-education before they leave, a better documentation of what people can and can't recycle, more clear signage at the transfer station. In fact, we're designing signs right now that have a graphic and it's spelled out. So really, it will be difficult to feign ignorance of what is allowed in each container. That's where we're going so far. But I do think some people are just not wanting to pay to dump their trash and are dumping it in the free area.
Mr. Chair,
Councilman.
not to like beat it to death, but, and I'm not saying we would want to do this, but I mean, if it wasn't contaminated, maybe it would make more sense. I mean, I'm curious if we're studying what other cities are doing. with a similar type of station? What's been successful in other places? And then what are the steps? Like if we're really serious and we put up signs and it doesn't work, what is it even viable to like post someone there? What would that involve? I mean, is that something that other cities do? Maybe volunteers? I'm wanting to brainstorm what else could we do that maybe is a step further. I mean, maybe it would involve the city partially investing in a head count along with Republic or something like that. I would hope we don't have to get to that point, but I think it would be a shame if we didn't have that recycling center. I guess I'm also wondering if maybe that's the challenge, is that the recycling and the transfer station are all co-located. I get why we're doing it, but I think people are just being cheap and they're just putting that trash in the recycling because they don't want to pay for it. Maybe there's a way to get around that.
Commissioner Strader, I was thinking about what you said, and I think I can put together just a punch list of things to share with the commission next time about what other cities do. And I know Boise has a, what do they call, Tom, the recycling experts, or they have there's a program in Boise where they, people can volunteer to be their Kerbit experts in town. And then they each commit to volunteering or doing some sort of teaching exercise for a couple hours a month. And so maybe that's something we can look at here and maybe have, volunteers in the know on Saturdays in particular when it's busiest, maybe be an attendant there and help people who are unsure of how to sort their materials or something like that. So I can work with Tom to put together a punch list of other successful drop sites and what other cities do. And we can bring that back for your view if that's okay.
Great.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Klein, I was incorrect. Kerbit Pros.
Tagging on to what Rochelle was just talking about, just pondering this little thought is if you had like a curb attendant, because you somewhat have to entice somebody to do that. And maybe we give that person, if it's like a student and we give them a credit towards something for their volunteer work or something along those lines. Or on another note, I personally can tell you that I have put stuff in there that I thought was recycling because it was recyclable where I came from. So guilty as charged there. And I didn't realize it until I went to the tour of the facility, some of the things that I was doing. And this is just something really tiny, but even just something like, because the real estate agents here could pass along this information ahead of time so that people can have a precursor, just something really small. Because I didn't know when I got here, I just kept putting stuff in there that I thought was recyclable. And I saw the sticker on the one thing, but I looked at it and then I forgot, and I looked at it and then I forgot. And so.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I think that is something, it seems like a good idea to have an attendant if this problem continues to persist. I know that Meridian High School is right there, Renaissance High School is right there, and that a lot of students, and both schools have very robust NHS programs which require outside volunteer hours. And so if that were to even be something, like if it's volunteer only and if it still continues to be a problem, just to even make it an opportunity for people, I have a feeling that there will be at least some people who can be there as an attendant to make sure people are aware. If the problem continues to persist, of course, right now that it's cold and a lot of other things, people will be less likely to be there. But if like over the summer or even continuing into warmer weather, these signs and the educational outreach isn't quite mitigating all of this. Just as another point of contact before they get to the drop site, that they can know what goes where. And people have another resource that's a little bit more human than a poster.
Additional comments? Michelle, I think we would be receptive to an update at a future date. Well, with that, we've taken care of all the items that are on the agenda as written. We move on to the mentioning that the next meeting is February 24th, 2021. I would like to get a feeling for the commission. As you know, we traditionally receive a quarterly report from Republic on a certain way of looking at data. And then we also get a quarterly report from city staff on some metrics for solid waste. Does the commission feel that both reports are beneficial to them in understanding our current situation with solid waste and recycling? Or do they feel like one or the other report is more important? I'll just give a chance for commissioners to make comments on that at this time.
Yeah, I think these reports have value, Mr. Chair. It seems like, especially for new commissioners, it can be pretty overwhelming to see lots of data. But it seems like here a few quarters ago, Republic Services kind of did more of an executive summary of some of the major items that I thought was helpful. We didn't get so much into the weeds, but that data was available for those who wanted to. But just having that executive overview of the consistent trends, I think it helps me to know if we're making a difference, if things are going in the right direction. In certain items. That's my 2 cents.
I concur with Commissioner Nelson.
Mr. Chair, I also like having the information. I would ask if there's any possible way to get the Republic report before the meeting, because it's pretty, there's quite a bit of information, and the executive summary is super helpful, but to be able to review it before the presentation, I think would make it more useful. So I don't know if that's possible to have that sent out as a PDF or something the day ahead of time or something.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Larson, we can definitely do that. And what I guess what I would ask is, do you want us to send that to Tom, and Tom can give both the city side and the highlights from Republic, or do you want Conrad to present as well? We can do either. We can have Conrad and Tom, or we can just send kind of that executive report out to all of you ahead of time and then have Tom hit the highlights.
I would ask Tom to weigh in on that. If it's easier for him to kind of do both, or
I want to go ahead and mention why I even opened this up, was just that I don't want to be driving the agenda in a way that's using more of the commissioner's time than they feel is warranted. So, if the data is useful and stuff, then great. But if there's any reason why we're belaboring the issue, then that's understood. Anyway, I will turn it to Tom to go ahead and address that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. It would actually be much simpler for me to present both pieces of data at the same time. I have to compile and track the report from Republic anyway, so I'm already working on it, so it would be no additional work for me to present both to the commission.
Tom, can you send the Conrad's report to the commission though if they want to read it? Okay.
I can also send out the executive report from Conrad to the commission for their review prior to our meeting.
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable approach, and we can continue to reduce that over time also. Then Conrad doesn't have to kind of sit through a meeting for just a short part, unless he just enjoys coming. Same thing for other volunteer work. But no, I think that'd be easier for you to kind of present the combined data.
Further comments? I definitely appreciate the feedback on that, and we'll go ahead and work to make that adjustment. Having said that, of course, then that was why, as the first quarter has completed, so we'll have on the agenda next month a report on the first quarter. And we've mentioned Republic's recycling enforcement, if there's a need for any ratcheting on that activity. I want to kind of mention to the commission to be prepared for a discussion on possible anaerobic digestion in Meridian at the next meeting, to go ahead and maybe be a activity to take care of some of the organic waste that we're producing. Members of the commission, are there any other topics that I have overlooked at this point that you want to pass on?
Mr. Chair, are you directing staff to prepare information for anaerobic digestion for next meeting?
Yes, please.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman.
We'll certainly chat. I think that one comment I just want to make, and maybe for a future meeting, I sense that there's a lot of enthusiasm on City Council this year and excitement about our upcoming plan. And so I would say, I think for Republic, just a heads up, now is the time to think about what expanded recycling might look like, and some things like along those lines, to start getting those plans ready and ready for presentation at some point to SWAC and eventually council. We heard feedback last night that weekly recycling is of interest. We've talked about composting. I think it feels like this is a year, there's a good amount of enthusiasm, I think. So just some feedback for people to start, dust your plans off that you may have had in the past. Doesn't mean we can do everything, and there are some constraints around what we can do, but I think this is a great year to try to get some ideas forward.
You got it. We're ready.
Well, if there's no further items to go ahead and mention at this point, then I will go ahead and declare the meeting adjourned. It is 5:15, and I very much appreciate your participation in all these subjects. Have a great month.
Thank you. See you next month.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good job.